Okay, welcome back, preppers, and as it would happen, you start to do a video on one thing and find you have another problem. So yeah, went over a pothole, believe it or not, something went clang, steering started to make a little bit of a noise, and yes, it broke a spring, but it took the top part of the spring out, and the bearing here, which is the top of the suspension on the McPherson strut, you have a bearing to assist with steering. Okay, it's all dropped down, hasn't it? Yep, so you can see that very, very clearly. And yeah, wasn't that a bit much to get home? I realised that I'd broken a spring, but didn't realise it was that badly. And you can see the brake there. Clean brake, yep, spring steel, can't be welded, yeah. And I have to be careful because when you're turning the steering in this condition, it could take the brake pipes out because they're right there. Yes, so you can have a listen here, see what sound it makes. Not very good at all. It's yeah, the spring is actually wearing into the bodywork at the top there where the bearing is missing. Just take it on another drive so you can hear what it sounds like inside the vehicle. Anyway, I'm not superstitious, that's just coincidence, isn't it? There's a little bit of a laugh, yeah, because shit happens. So anyway, I went out to supermarket. I happened to see they were selling metal jerry cans. I thought, yeah, why not? A little bit of a flat. This was £17 from a favourite supermarket, Aldi. And all it is just a cheap jerry can that they're selling. The good ones are very expensive, but this is good enough for purpose, yep, and it also has a nozzle with it, which you do need, don't you? You cannot use a jerry can without a nozzle, can you? Yep, so it's a little bit weak, and you can see the welds on there, it's all tacked into place. Now, what I've got to say here, it's worth watching a video by Wranglestar about his tests on jerry cans, cheap and expensive ones, and he compares the difference. Yeah, good channel actually, and I'll recommend this one. This guy has a workshop, yes, and he tries out all sorts of things, and he also cuts a can in half so you get an idea of what's inside. And he's absolutely right, because some of them have got really shitty coatings which could possibly come out when you pour the fuel out, okay, so you have to be careful, and I would always advise to strain your fuel as you're pouring it out, okay, so put it through a filter and a funnel, okay, big difference. I've had cheap jerry cans before, and yes, the paint does come up from the inside, and that could cause problems in fuel lines later on, so be warned. Yeah, the expensive ones are much better, but I'm aware of this, and I'm telling you about this now. Would be nice to have a little holder to put that nozzle on, but never mind. Serves a purpose, and what I've done here is almost doubled my range by the amount of fuel I have in, because I have a 40 litre fuel capacity in the tank. That's 20 litres, and then I've got another 10 litres in here. Okay, so that is taking my range up a bit further, so if I can't find an open fuel station, then I've got extra fuel. Yes, there's another 10 there, and I did want to buy another canister, but they'd already sold out. So anyway, let's talk about diesel fuel. This is what the video is about, and water in diesel fuel. So my particular system on this Citroen is a bleed through the leak back, okay, so I'm going to take some diesel out here, and I'm going to add some water to it, so you don't get the wrong impression. I always keep my fuel system nice and clean, but you can see the frothiness here. That's only because diesel froths when it gets pumped, doesn't it? That's the leak back on the vehicle system, okay, and that's the only way I can prime it up is and bleed filters, yeah, through that primer. Anyway, this is what water looks like in fuel. Yeah, little globules when it's shaken up, okay, and water will always attract itself to itself, so it will, in a fashion that will all come together, and diesel floats on water, yeah, because it's lighter. Hang on, I'll just bring this up to you so you can see. I'll shake this up and you can see the bubbles there, right? Okay, there you go, that's the water in the fuel, and that is very, very hazardous to engine conditions, and I've got to tell you why in this video, okay? So there you see that, little globules of water, they will all amass together and form one big water bubble, if you like, always at the bottom of a can, right? So if you happen to need to test your diesel, which I advise, Take a sample by sucking it out from the bottom of the jerry can and not the top, because the water will be at the bottom, yeah? And if you drain diesel filters out, sometimes you'll see a little globule of water skate across the diesel before it sinks to the bottom, yeah? Which you can probably see there. There is a couple of droplets there. Now this filter system, this is a sedimenter, has sensors in it, so well, I'll show you that in a minute, but there you can see the little globules. They're starting to join together. Yeah, water does that. Yeah, okay, so now you see it. It can't be unseen, can it? Here's a word of warning. Beware of cheap fuel that's been sold from trucks that might have gone down with a problem. Yeah, because it might have water or something else in it. So why is water bad for diesel fuel systems? Question mark. Well, this is what I'm going to tell you in this video. But first of all, we've got to start off with a story, and this is a disaster, okay? Fuel tank cap here, fuel tank off a DAF MY17, and then this is AdBlue tank, and you can see the distance between them. The driver managed to put AdBlue into the fuel, which is disastrous, okay? This fuel here is completely contaminated, and the system has been wrecked on this vehicle. It stopped working. Okay, it destroyed the injectors, and there are 6 of them, and they're very expensive. Okay, injectors electronically controlled. Then you have 2 pumping units on the vehicle as well, which are the same as high pressure pumps. Yep, wrecked. Okay, so they're like £600 each. So the bill on the whole thing was coming up to nearly £7,000 or £8,000. The whole of the fuel system had to be flushed out, and so the injectors are underneath there. Well, that's each of those has a fitting which has to be replaced. Yep, filters in there, and of course there's an inquiry ongoing about this as well. Yep, so water causes instant cooling to sensitive injector nozzles, and it makes them crack. It's as simple as that. It's instant cooling as the water gets injected, and then they will split, and of course which in turn leads to poor injection and the possibility of bore washing, which means that the diesel will not get atomized. It will wash the bore of oil, which then will cause friction and then a seized engine. Okay, plus it can also, if the nozzle injectors are cracked, can cause a poor combustion, which leads to engine damage again, melted or cracked pistons. So there you go, that is it in a nutshell. Okay, so you don't actually get to see them if you pull the injectors out. They are micro cracks, and the nozzle is there, okay, on just where it's carbonized, yep, and that causes problems all the way around, and it happens quite frequently. Water as well, due to the lack of lubricating qualities, causes wear and damage to high pressure pumping devices like high pressure pumps or pumping equipment. Yes, so you should never let water get anywhere near the high pressure devices on your fuel system of a diesel engine or even a petrol engine, because that causes catastrophic failure. Right, okay, so we have a diesel filter here, a fairly modern one. In the bottom of this, it has a water sensor, okay, and basically it just reads the voltage. When it senses water, it will put a light on in the vehicle, and this is the way it goes because people don't ever take water out of the filters, but this is something you should be aware of. Okay, the light comes on, you need to take action. At the bottom here is actually a drain for water, and this should be done regularly, at least once a week, or depending on how many miles you're doing or how many litres of diesel you're putting through the system. But that's right at the bottom of the filter, which will drain out all of the water. Okay, and you should never really let it collect, but this filter is designed to collect a certain amount of fluid water in it. This vehicle here has a bowl on a primary filter, which is which they used to be called a sedimenter at one time, which would be a glass bowl which you'd regularly drain. Okay, now I'll just pump at the top here, and I'll pump some of the diesel out. Basically it's a priming handle, but this will of course push the diesel out there with any water, and you can see there's a couple of globules of water in there, but nothing serious, because there is also a sensor in there which will actually indicate in the cab that it's got water in there. Okay, so you have a priming pump as well on most diesel systems, or should I say the heavier side of diesel systems, because cars may not have a priming pump, but you need to prime these filters up so it can get to the injectors. Yeah, this is a primary filter with a sensor and a drain as well, which is on a CF DAF, and a bit closer look here, this will tell you if there's any water in that filter, and there is a drain facility as well. And this is a secondary filter which is on the same truck with CF. Yeah, which is, yes, if water gets up to there, this actually has finer microns in it, but if it gets past there, you're in trouble. And just for reference, Cummins engine, there's an oil filter. Yep, so there's an LF DAF, yes, and there's another LF DAF. Now this is the LF which I just showed you with this type of primary filter, which is right next to the tank with a priming handle. Yeah, okay, so fuel comes out the tank, goes through this, and you can prime up the whole system. Yeah, just from that priming handle there, which is on the body of the filter housing. Okay, so on some HGVs you'll have a dual fuel tank which will have hydraulic oil in it and diesel, and sometimes they do split, letting the hydraulic oil go into the diesel, and that's the AdBlue, yeah, which is water and urea mix. You should never mix it with the fuel. Primary filter there comes up from the tank, goes through this, and I've showed you that already, that it has a sedimenter in the bottom of it with a sensor as well, which will get most of the shit out. And then it goes on to the secondary filters, which there are 2 of there. Okay, it's actually quite serious business not to get anything up to the injectors or the high pressure pumps. Different vehicles like this Iveco have filters positioned in different areas, and basically they have you don't need to crack anything off to prime the system up. Yeah, you can actually prime it with a handle. Diesel system on this one, on the priming handle, actually has a last chance filter on it. Yep, from the primary filter. Yep, that will take out any crap and crud that happens to get past that filter, and it does, as you can see here. Yeah. So how does water get into a diesel fuel system? Well, there's a couple of ways it gets into the diesel fuel system. One of those is from contaminated fuel, and the other one is from condensation. So you wonder how you get condensation in your tank, don't you? Well, first of all, yeah, your filler neck and your cap actually has a vent on here, which we will talk about why in a minute, but that's where you put the fuel in. If any water is going to get in, it's going to come in through the fuel source, either from the bunding tanks of the filling station, or if you buy dodgy diesel, then it might well be contained with it. So you have to test your fuel, being a prepper, yes. So the diesel fuel system has something called leak back. It has 2 pipes, one from the tank and one that returns back to the tank. Now this leak back is excess diesel that has not been injected, and it usually acts as a lubrication. You can see by this clear pipe here and the green connector. Okay, that's the outward back to the tank, and I'll just show you this because I was priming up a diesel filter after a change, and I'm sucking through the fuel, and it's pushing the air back into the tank. Okay, so that pipe goes back to the tank, and this is actually very important to remember, because when the diesel comes out of the system, it is actually hot. So what they do is they put a fuel cooler somewhere in line, which is this, which is under the vehicle, which cools the fuel pipes as it returns back to the tank. Okay, so you have return back to the tank. Vented fuel cap is exactly what it says. It's vented, so as the fuel has been drawn, it won't cause a vacuum and stopping the fuel from moving. Now what happens when warm things cool down? They draw moisture in, so you get condensation in the tank. This is why you should have your tank full or 3/4 full at any time. And this vent, which allows atmospheric pressure in the tank, can draw moisture in as the diesel cools down. So there we have it. Basically, where this connector is and this sensor, okay, for sensing water, it will actually allow quite a lot of water into that system before it kicks a light on, okay, whereas you don't want it to go too high, because the bottom part of the filter is actually a sedimenter, yeah. So you need to drain this regularly, and that is your drain, and usually turn the ignition on and let the pump through. Okay, on this particular car it actually has a drain through, so all you need to do is, even if you have the car running, yeah, you can just undo this or have the ignition on and then just drain it out, and it doesn't take much. It's only a little bit of water once a week and you're okay. And yes, it definitely matters on the fuel quality. We don't know what fuel we're buying, and it even happens in supermarkets these days where you get a certain amount of contaminants in solids, or maybe a little bit of water. It can't be helped, because as I say, warmth to cold then draws in moisture. So there you go, you've been warned.